Now to the United States, where the FBI says the man who committed the New Year's terror attack in New Orleans acted alone. 14 people were killed and dozens more injured when Army veteran Shamsud Din-Jabbar rammed a truck into crowds of revellers in the city's French Quarter. The Texan is said to have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State and had made recordings in which he condemned music, drugs and alcohol. He was killed in a shootout with police after the attack. Well, let's pick up that point with Bart Schurman, who is a professor of terrorism and political violence at the Institute of Security and Global Affairs at the University of Leiden. Welcome to DW, Professor. On whether or not this person acted alone, the FBI now saying that Shamsud Din-Jabbar acted alone. How are they likely to have come to that conclusion, given that they'd previously said that he had accomplices?
Well, I think they will have gone through hours and hours of CCTV footage, for instance. They will, of course, very carefully gone through any kind of phone records, anything left behind on his computer. And initially, there were some suspicions of multiple people being involved. And at this point in time, they seem to be ruling that out. Although, if we recall the FBI press conference from yesterday, they said there was no definitive link with the car bomb that went off outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas on the same day. But that still suggests that there might be a connection between these two individuals that could pop up at a later date. But at this stage, the investigation seems to be moving into the direction that this individual acted on his own and did not have any help in the planning or preparation of the attack.
OK, so let us speculate about this individual, Shamsud Din-Jabbar, a US Army veteran who'd served in Afghanistan, which sounds like an unusual background for someone who then turns on the country that he serves in order to do this sort of thing. Is this a pattern that you've seen before?
Well, it's interesting, this army background, I think, for two reasons. First of all, over the past several years, we've been increasingly worried about extremism in the armed forces, not just in the US, also in Europe, in Germany, for instance, although usually that worry focuses on people with a right-wing extremist background. That being said, it's certainly not unheard of for people with more of a potentially jihadist, Islamist affiliation and an army background to strike. Think of the Fort Hood shootings in the US in 2009, where also I think it was an army major who had radicalized played a role. So that's one thing that makes this interesting. The other aspect here is that we know a little bit about the life of the suspect, Mr. Jabbar, here after he left active duty in 2015. He seems to have gone through a period of having difficulty adjusting to civilian life. We also hear from some reporting that this was a time where he refocused on his beliefs to a much greater degree than he had previously done. And although this is very early days, this time period, this difficult transition towards civilian life may give us some initial clues as to what may have caused or precipitated his radicalization.
And as we zoom out from him into the general area of what it takes for someone to become radicalized, is that what you're generally talking about? Someone with problems that becomes more and more immersed in what they think might be a solution, and then they go from thoughts to deeds?
Well, it'd be nice if we could have, let's say, a profile or a standard picture like that. Unfortunately, we don't. And the bottom line really is that radicalization is not something that is limited to individuals with certain types of vulnerabilities. It's certainly not something that we can attribute to mental health difficulties. It is essentially something that could happen to most people, I should say. So it's very difficult to kind of generalize from this and draw a bigger picture of what might have been going on here. Generally, we do see people developed at some point in their life a vulnerability to a radicalized viewpoint, a readiness to kind of throw overboard everything that they had thought they knew about the world and how it worked and their position in it, to reevaluate at a very fundamental level also what their role is, and to have a readiness to accepting much more extremist points of view. But what brought about this change in perspective in this particular case is something we are still not so sure of.
That's fine, but on the general point about someone becoming radicalized, is it possible? Are there signs that family, friends, even the security forces can spot when someone might be going down the wrong path before it sort of gets to this extreme end of things?
Well, I think so. I mean, and generally, we're dealing with people who think that they have found some kind of new truth, and they will spend inordinate amounts of time going through ideological materials. Lots of time spent online. It's one of those classic giveaways on extremist forums, for instance. But we often also see a recalibration of their offline life. And one of the clear signs that usually accompanies this is that they will recalibrate kind of who they hang out with. So they will no longer spend as much time with their old friends or their old family. They might abandon their job. They might stop any kind of educational program that they are enrolled in to spend all of the time that they have on their newfound convictions and the people who share those views with them. So we see a drastic shift really in how these people go about their lives in many, though certainly not all cases.
OK, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through that. Professor Bart Schurman from the University of Leiden.
You're very welcome.
Despite the tragedy, the city has reopened the famous street where it happened.
Less than 36 hours after the deadly attack on New Year's revellers, New Orleans' famous party hotspot Bourbon Street tries to return to normal. At the street's entrance, a tribute to those killed. The city's police chief appealed to citizens' sense of resilience.
This city is amazing. This city is known for its resiliency. This is a city that is still impacted from 20 years ago with Hurricane Katrina. This city knows pain, but this city also knows how to recover.
Her words were mirrored by locals and tourists alike.
In New Orleans, this is what we do. We celebrate life during, before, and after, unfortunately. It's very unfortunate what happened, but this is what we do in the city of New Orleans.
Today feels like a completely normal day back on Bourbon Street. Obviously think about all the victims and the families, but I feel safe. I think it's probably the safest and cleanest Bourbon Street will ever be that I will see.
I mean, like I said, I've lived here 62 years, and we've always, we can't let nothing hold us down. Like, I've been here through Katrina and all, so we could get right back up and running, That's how we are.
Security was heightened across the city as it braced for the Sugar Bowl college football playoff at Caesars Superdome Stadium. The game was postponed by a day, but throngs of undeterred football fans still came out to support their teams.
Golden Domers, go baby, Irish.
And those without tickets flocked to local bars.
We're trying to make it not change how we're living our lives. Exactly. If you do that, then the crazy person who did this, who doesn't cherish life, wins. We got to keep moving forward, and that's what the city of New Orleans seems to be doing.
Despite the tragedy, New Orleans is a city determined to go on living.
Well, our reporter Stefan Siemens is on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Welcome back, Stefan. Tell us more about what it's like there as the city gets itself together again.
Well, Bourbon Street is back in business, if you will, just less than 48 hours after this heinous attack on Bourbon Street here, just 48 hours, less than 48 hours, that this street here was littered with mangled bodies. Now it's back in party mode. Alcohol is flowing, bars are open, restaurants are open, music is blasting, and there's a lot of people strolling up and down, more or less intoxicated, Bourbon Street. This is iconic Bourbon Street. This is the French Quarter. That's New Orleans. The differentiator is law enforcement. Very casually, everybody is here. Plainclothes law enforcement, state troopers, metropolitan police, police even on horseback, something typical for New Orleans too, and for New York, but definitely for New Orleans. And even the National Guard military police patrolling Bourbon Street and the entire French Quarter here. So that is the big difference. But people seem to not have forgotten what just happened here. That 14 people, at least 40 people were killed here. But they are saying yes to looking forward. They want Bourbon Street and New Orleans back in business.
OK, so heightened security presence, especially, I guess, with the Sugar Bowl, this enormous college football game that's gone ahead, pushed back by just a day. Tell us more about how authorities reassured the tens of thousands who attended.
Well, first of all, security was heightened, no doubt. There were security measures which I have seldomly seen for a regular football game. Now, that wasn't a regular football game because it just was, you know, postponed on and the day was supposed to happen on the day when this attack happened, was postponed 24 hours. So, of course, heightened security, lots of law enforcement visibly on the street, controls, checkpoints, and so on. However, you see, the thing is that politicians and anybody here in the state of Louisiana, from the governor all the way down to city commissioners, councilmen, the mayor of New Orleans, everybody went on a PR campaign all day long and tell people on television, on radio, and everywhere else, on any media platform available, that New Orleans is safe now, that the police, that the FBI, the lead agency in the investigation of this attack, did their job. They processed the scene. They made sure everything is safe. You know, there were sweeps up and down Bourbon Street right after the attack. A few sweeps to make sure that there are no more IEDs, etc. So, PR campaign by officials to make people in New Orleans and visitors from all over the country for the football game believe that they are safe. They bought into it. That's why they're here.
And the latest on the suspect?
Well, the latest on the suspect is that now, as we have heard before, the FBI says he doesn't have any associated. He had no help in planning this. Now, coming to planning, that's the key word here. The suspect or the attacker planned this meticulously. He had planted IEDs in coolers, in water coolers along Bourbon Street. He had a remote-controlled detonator in the car with him, and he had a complete, according to the FBI, different plan. Mow people over, get out of the car, start shooting, and as soon as other people come to the scene and law enforcement comes, so he wanted to make those water coolers explode. Now, that didn't work out, thank goodness. It could have been way worse from what it was, but that's the latest what we know in the investigation. Reminder, this investigation is ongoing. There will be more and more news coming out, more and more background, complexity revealed for his motives, etc. in the next few days, of course.
OK, thank you for that. DW reporter Stefan Siemens in New Orleans.